the static HTML element into dynamic. It makes dynamic. Static HTML element more dynamic. It makes it dynamic. That means it extends HTML. It makes the HTML more declarative without writing much functionality. It converts the static HTML element into dynamic. That is one responsibility of directive. Not only just extending existing HTML, directive have the ability to return HTML. That means if I use a directive like this, that means a directive like app-login. This is a directive. Now, if I use that directive, if I use the directive app login, then the directive app login have the ability to return markup, means it can return a login page. So sometimes directive can extend your HTML. Sometimes the directive can extend HTML. It can extend HTML. Sometimes it can return HTML. It can return HTML. Sometimes it can make the HTML more interactive, like applying the classes and all. Right? These are all the important options that a directive can do. These are all the important options that a directive can do. Directive can do. So technically, directives in Angular play the key role in controlling HTML and making the HTML more dynamic. Actually, Angular people directly are not working with much directives. In early version, that is in Angular JS, we need to deal with a lot of directives. We need to work with a lot of directives. Now we are using a limited number of directives. Internally, so many directives are working. So the usage of these directives reduced. So that's the reason working with directives with a limited number of options in Angular. So technically, you should know that a directive can be used. Actually, a directive can be used as, you can use directive as an element. You can use as an element. You can use directive as an element. You can use directive as an attribute. You can use directive as a class. And you can use attribute as a comment also. So technically, a directive can be used in any way. Generally, directives are used as elements to return markup. Directives are used as attributes to extend markup. Directives are used as classes to make the markup more interactive. So that is the actual purpose of directive. And very important is, directive is technically a function. That means it is technically a function. So what does dynamic means? You don't know static and dynamic. Already we learned. static, dynamic. You don't know about that? Already in the beginning of architecture itself, I explained you. Static DOM, dynamic DOM. Right. That is what dynamic is. Means it starts interacting with your, so it is going to interact with you. That is what actually the dynamic is. Right. Now, a directive can work in all these ways. Actually, internally directive is built like this. So we have Angular dot directive. Actually, directive is a function. Its function, suppose like ng model. That is a directive function. And this directive returns a functionality. This directive returns a functionality. Directive returns a functionality. Lot of things are there about the directive. But technically, directive is a function. It returns some functionality. So it handles data, it handles your interactions. So we use this ng model as our directive. Actually, it is a function. It has some functionality. Technically, in the background, directives are built like this. So how we can explain about that point is, so directive returns markup. Directive returns markup. So directive used as element to return markup. That will be better. Directive is used as element to return markup. Directive is used as attribute to extend markup. Extend markup. Directive is used as class. So to make markup more interactive. So we don't use directive as comments here. That is in older versions, not now. So directive is used as element, as attribute, as a class. Right? So that is the reason based on the behavior of directive. Angular provides several predefined directives. So which are classified into three types, which are classified into three groups. Classified into three groups. So one is we have component directives. We have component directives. Second one, we have structural directives. Right? And we have another attribute directives. The component directives, structural directives, and attribute directives. These are the three types